Chilly in here today. Brr. Um, I am a fight fan, big time fight fan, if you don't know. Always have been, as long as I can remember. I've been involved in martial arts since I was a kid. Been a fan of just watching martial arts, watching boxing, professional wrestling a little bit, but mainly martial arts, boxing and all. And I love it for a variety of reasons. But the promotion of it, the promotion of these fights has always, in my mind, trafficked in the gutter, you know? Swimming around in the sewage. And that's, to me, is just kind of how it's always been. Like, if you're a fight fan, and you've been a fight fan, then you know this. Now, I relate it to, like, the NFL, right? You watch the NFL, and there's a lot of bad things, like these human beings shouldn't be doing this, right? But whatever you're doing in your mind to keep watching the NFL, as I do as well, allows you to keep moving, you know, not skip a beat. And that's the same thing that fight fans are doing. Most of them. Some of them just enjoy the sewage, I guess. But most of them, I would say, are just, you know, they're there for the fight. They love the theater of it. But when that type of environment meets mainstream, kind of like outrage culture, it could be a problem, as you would imagine. And there was this dude last weekend. His name's Sean Strickland. We had a big fight. If you don't know who he is, doesn't matter. And there was some controversy because he made a lot of homophobic, transphobic comments previously, and pretty much doubled down when he was asked about them. And it caused a big stir. Like I said, you have mainstream who don't really pay attention to the fight world, but they're getting a glimpse of the fight world, and you know they're mad, which I understand. My sensibilities as well. What he said was bad. It was wrong. Normally, I just kind of sit back and eat my popcorn and just watch people in their foolishness. But sometimes, while I'm popping the popcorn, I get sad. I get sad, people. When the back and forths go back and forth. Is Ephesians chapter 4, verse... What we got here? We'll say 26 and 27. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Okay. So in your anger, do not sin. All right. So anger in and of itself, not a sin. It's just an emotion that God gives us. And it can be a helpful one, right? It gets us motivated, get us going in the right direction. It's just not meant to stay with us, all right? So don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. You know, let anger have whatever work it's going to do and get you in the right direction, and you let it go. Because if you don't let it go, you give the devil a foothold. And a foothold, I'm thinking kind of like somebody climbing a mountain, and they have someplace to put their feet so they can keep on with the progress, you know? Or someone marching forward, and every step they're taking forward, they've got a foothold. Further and further into your camp. And it's kind of what the enemy does in our minds, right? We got some anger going on, some frustrations. And every time we allow those things to fester, the enemy's right there in our heads, right? And he's up there, he's propping his feet up in our couch, right? He's redecorating stuff, he's raiding our fridge. Before we know it, we look around our place of our minds and all you see is the enemy. There's a podcast, a sports podcast that I listen to, and their sensibilities are more left-leaning. And they were talking about the whole Sean Strickland thing. And I was disappointed in them because they're very smart people, I would say, and very creative people. And they're not like a typical sports podcast. They're into some foolery, some hijinks, right? They like to have fun. But they were talking about this subject, and the only thing that they could come up with was F you. F you, Sean Strickland. And F you, fight fans, for allowing this. And F you, UFC, that's where Sean Strickland is from. That's the arena they're fighting in. It was just F you, F you, F you. And that was the best they could do. And I just found that, somebody over here, gotta watch my back. I just found that to be very disappointing. And look, I understand that he said those things, and it's wrong. My sensibilities are the same as theirs. And, but again, whenever you get to the point of just F you, or name calling or something like that, there's no more conversation. There's no progress that could be made. And it's even celebrated in our culture, right? In our society where if someone hurts you, you get to hurt them back. You justify you justify your retaliation because of how much they hurt you. And it shouldn't be that way. It's childish, right? It's like one of your kids saying, I hit them because they hit me first. I did this horrible thing to this kid because that kid did something to me first. And it doesn't make it okay. And as adults, we should know better, but we don't, right? We do the same thing. And I just expected more from this podcast. And I expect more from people in general. Maybe I shouldn't, but it's not helpful. And that kind of thing is dangerous because I'm talking about petty things of, you saying something to me and I say something to you back and not caring, justifying it because of how I've been hurt. But it can escalate to violence. It can escalate to war. That's how terrorism gets going, right? They're holding on to something, some sort of hurt towards them and their group. And that's how they're justifying their actions. You did this to me, and therefore I can do whatever I want to you. And that's how the enemy works, right? The enemy's all in our heads. And why would the enemy leave if we're making it so comfortable for him to stay there? We do it to ourselves, giving him those footholds. Yeah. Black History Month is coming up soon, and celebrating and honoring and learning more about certain black figures and especially civil rights leaders. We see the civil rights leaders, and what I respect about them so much is that despite the valid reasons to attack with violence, they didn't do that. They didn't say, well, because of the history of our country, because of the results of the history of our country, because of slavery, let's go beat up all the white people, right? That's not what they said. They looked beyond their anger. Sure, they were angry, and rightly so. And that anger helped push things in the right direction. But they didn't let the anger control them, consume them, and become something that they didn't want to be, right? They stayed focused on the goal. And it's tempting, isn't it? Someone says something or does something, or you see a clip of something online that just rubs you the wrong way. And it's tempting to give the enemy a foothold. It's tempting to just let all that stuff fester inside and to spew, poison in every direction. It's tempting, especially when it's so much a part of our culture today with social media. Yeah. So what do we do with the Sean Stricklands in our lives? You got to pray about that. The Sean Stricklands in your life, I don't know. You got to pray. This Sean Strickland, what do we do? I think those, like that podcast I was listening to is a big podcast, and they have a lot of influence. I think people like that who are sincerely outraged, not that's fake outrage, there's too many people who will, look, activism is this, there's a sacrifice. There's sacrifice involved in true activism. Any type of cause, you got to be willing to sacrifice. And there aren't enough people who are willing to sacrifice. And therefore, they just kind of spew words, and sometimes poisonous words, thinking that they're doing something and they're not. So I would say, people like that podcast, people who are out there with true activism, then you stick to it, right? You try to make a real difference so that the Sean Stricklands of our lives get pushed further and further in the background, right? But in this context, the Ephesians, the church, the Apostle Paul's writing about a church that's living together, and how do we be most like God and worship God together? How do we live together? And with living together and doing life together as Christians, there's going to be disagreements, there's going to be anger, there's going to be frustrations, there's going to be disappointments, there's going to be disputes, there's going to be all those things. But at the end of the day, we need to let that go and remember our goal. Remember that we are family. We are to come together and still follow God together. We can't let anger give the enemy a place in the church, right? So, anger is inevitable in this world and in the church too. Anger is inevitable, but we can't let anger stay around. Anger is a horrible counselor.